Hello, everybody. Andrew Petersen. Welcome to the second last edition of G'day Sharm El-Sheikh. Coming to you today, Thursday, 17 November. I've got that date right, haven't I, everybody? Thank you. From the pavilion of the Women Business Coalition and WBCSD. And today I am joined by a very auspicious Australian team. So we welcome Ilona Millar, partner of Gilbert and Tobin, Jai Anderson from the CFO from Corporate Carbon, and of course, welcome back Peter Holt, the General Manager of Energetics. And today is the second last day of this this jamboree, this business event, this massive thing that is this particular COP. Now, I heard yesterday they've definitely got to 46,000 something or other people who have actually attended, as distinct from registered, but it still represents, I think, the single biggest number for any COP. First question, as we have been doing over the last 2 weeks, is this your first COP, your 10th COP, or your 27th COP? So firstly, Ilona, to you.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. This is certainly not my first COP. I was just trying to figure it out before we came on the panel, and I think it's number 15 for me.
And Jai?
It's my first COP, so a bit sort of wet behind the ears, but yeah, really excited to be here, and it's been a very eye-opening and enriching experience.
And Peter, remind us again, and I breaks my train.
It's just the third COP for me, Andrew. Just the third. It started in Paris, which is a good way to start.
Yeah.
And with that, then let's go back to the first timer, because this is a good intro. What's been your observation about this thing called COP?
Yeah, I think well, the sheer volume of people, I think you said 46,000. I mean, you feel every single one of those 46,000 people.
They've all lined up at the coffee line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all 46,000 coffees being served by Australian contingent every day. But the vastness of it, I sort of liken it to a big music festival where you're sort of finding stages all over the place. But I think one of the sort of things that I noticed is that there's some great content at each of the pavilions, and lots of people sort of wanting to tell their story and help educate people around the place. But I guess and so a lot of the negotiations feel a little bit sort of separate to those agendas. But I think there's a good enough sort of information flow to the people in the conference, and so it's, you can sort of keep in touch with what's going on and immerse yourself into everything.
Let's move over to Ilona and pick up on this this point that Jai makes, which I felt as well, which is the disconnect between the negotiations and this thing that's becoming a business event. Yeah. What's been your observation?
Yeah, so if I look back, and I think the first COP I was at was Nairobi in 2006, and you had about probably 4,000 or 5,000 negotiators all there working on text, and then you had maybe 1,000 other people from NGOs, business, very small sort of civil society representation. And the events were largely sort of run through the UN agencies. Yeah. Very, very different sort of kettle of fish. And that sort of, was the norm for a long time, and is the same for most other multilateral environment treaty negotiations. Fast forward, 15 years, and it is becoming almost like two quite distinct and separate events. The negotiations are taking place in one part. You get a little bit of information flow coming back into the pavilions, but the area where the pavilions are is very much like a giant trade show. It's really quite distinct, and I think there's it's great to see the representation of all the different groups. I mean, this year what has been quite incredible is there are 5 different enormous halls where the country and business and civil society pavilions are being held. In other COPs, even the large ones with quite a bit of engagement, you might have had 1 or 2 air hangers instead of 5, and so this is crazy. I mean, almost every single country has a pavilion now, from Brazil to Zimbabwe, which are actually directly opposite each other.
Yeah.
So it is quite a different beast, and I do wonder sort of, how they interconnect anymore sometimes.
Yeah, and if they do anymore. Yeah. Pete, let's talk about business and the reason why you're here. We talked earlier in the week about the activity that you were seeing going on. What's been your reflection since that time about who's here, not just from Australian business, but just more broadly, who from business is here, what sectors are here, and why are they here? Yeah.
Sure. So we've got quite a large representation of business, I would say, at this COP, particularly businesses that have African operations as well. So as this is an African COP, where, for example, South 32 had a large contingent from both Australia and their South African operations here as well. And they were wanting to engage in terms of how they could understand what's happening, particularly from all the negotiation sides. But at the same time, all of businesses, including South 32, and this is in the public domain, have got net zero plans and transformations. And now they're trying to operationalize that and make it happen, which really comes down to financing as well. So the financing element and how you can engage in finance, both from the public and the private sector, is becoming an increasing focus as well. So it wasn't the, even though you had the pavilions, and I'm calling this the physical manifestation of the internet. When you Google climate change, you would end up here. Yeah. And then you can go to the UN, you could go to Brazil, but then you get distracted by John Kerry walking by. But what was happening though, with people were using this as an informal and sometimes formal place to conduct business meetings as well. One-on-ones with people and high-level people in organizations that you don't normally get a chance to speak to. So if we're talking about ambition to action, this is a way of getting action much faster and quicker. People are aligned in terms of their thinking, understand the specifics for their business, and then get on to doing business as well and bringing that back home, wherever that is globally, to bring that into practice. What's missing are decisions. Now, we weren't expecting any decisions coming into the COP this time either, but we're still arguing around Article 6, and we're in 2022. We need to sort these things out. We need to move on. We need to not backtrack on 1.5. So for me, what's really missing from the negotiation side is our actions. So we're talking about ambition to actions. It needs to start with the UN Secretary and obviously all the parties coming to agreement, not worrying about every single detail, but getting the larger global carbon trading market mechanisms in place, getting the finance instruments in place, and just moving. We don't have time to waste any. Yeah. So for me, decisions are, even though we weren't expecting them, decisions are what's missing.
Yeah,
I read this morning, just before you answer, I read this morning, we still haven't seen the cover text.
No, I think it is about to come out. But again, typically you would have had the presidency circulating the elements of that decision text probably from the weekend, and then socializing that through bilateral meetings with heads of delegation, the senior ministers who are here on the ground. And there does seem to be a lack of urgency around that process, and I think a lack of urgency around a number of the key processes. These meetings in the negotiating framing always do set processes, and those processes have timelines, and so you need to reach an agreement by before 2025 on, for example, a new collective goal on long-term finance. But that doesn't mean you can't be progressing that at pace before 2025 instead of being at 10 minutes to midnight trying to get an agreement on what that new goal might look like. And that's just one example. A big issue here has been really starting to operationalize support and the frameworks for loss and damage, and indeed finance for loss and damage. And again, we're starting to move back into that. We're not ready to agree to anything concrete, so we've got to start with a process. And every time you start with a process, it just ends up, pushing things back and back. So that sense of urgency and the need to move quickly, you can't really stress that enough here.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's interesting how that part of it does seem to be not failing, but not achieving what it does in the past in terms of its own expected outcomes. Jai, let's go to you. And it's an interesting question around missing because in one sense you don't know what's missing, but what would you like to have seen that you haven't yet seen happen in this environment?
Oh, I think, and it actually segues into something we're going to discuss later today. But I think a bit of ambition and a bit of bold actions and behaviour, and I guess you come here excited, hoping for really really watershed moments and outcomes that are really going to change the face of what's going on. But as you get to as you've sort of been to Swan on 2, you realise these processes don't happen overnight, and they do take time. But yeah, I think it would be, I guess for me, it'd be good to see a little bit more people on the front foot, sort of pushing the agendas that we all came here to talk about, and so I think that's definitely one for me. Some countries have had to be appointed to kind of step in to help, get some of these processes, get rid of the flies. Get some of these processes back on track. So, Australia and India are, taking the lead on climate finance. We heard yesterday that Norway and Singapore were helping with some of the redrafting of Article 6, and so I think I guess that's a sign that things need a bit of handholding to kind of get to where they need to go.
Yeah. All right. So 2 last questions, 3, because we're going to talk about very quickly what's happening later today. But 2 questions are: what are you going to take away from this?
Well, what am I taking away? We're still a long way to go. Quite well advanced in terms of the clean energy transformation side of things. We're getting far more sophisticated discussions now from the Chinas of the world and other places, Americas, in terms of particularly seeing Australia and particularly South Australia in the penetration of renewables within the grid, particularly then firming capacity and the role of alternatives. How do you provide that firming capacity? Obviously, batteries are a solution for that as well. That's the key takeaway, and that's what we're doing. The other element that's still unresolved from a technical point of view and a structural point of view then is what's happening with the other sectors. So obviously vehicles were quite exciting. Australia's behind the curve on that, but we're rapidly coming up to speed. And we were listening to the Norwegian minister the other day talking about her experience and how they've incentivized over a relatively short period of time, since 2006 from memory to now, with over 80% EV fleet from memory. So looking forward to that transformation locally, but then we've still got a lot of R&D and work, and we need to do everything. Looking at green cement, green steel, to looking at what we do with hydrogen. What's the role of hydrogen, CCS, electrification in all of these hard to abate sectors as well?
We'll come back to the first one. So, Charles, what are you taking away? Taking back
some new friends. It's been nice to be able to hang out with some people that I've been seeing around the traps, but actually now form relationships with them. I think it's baby steps, but a bit of dialogue with government. One thing, the Australia Pavilion, they've really made an effort to really try and engage with the people there. And I think a little bit more knowledge. I think that never goes astray from a lot of the great content here. But yeah, I think they're probably the main things that I'll be taking back home. The suitcase is full.
Already? Okay. And Ilona.
Yeah, well, I mean, I typically, will track all the carbon pricing and market issues at COPs. And I think what I'm sort of seeing from the discussions and the side events, the work that's being undertaken by some of the international organisations and multilateral development banks is that there is still and will be a really, really strong role for carbon pricing and markets globally.
Okay.
I think there's a real push to get countries ready for Article 6.
Yeah.
And indeed, there's quite a lot of activity happening, whether it's through Japan's work, the work of Switzerland, and then other groups that are developing the infrastructure and platforms that will support, the next iteration of global carbon trading.
Can I just interrupt?
Mhm.
The announcement, what was it, beginning of this week? Beginning of this week, the African carbon market. Is that a game changer?
Look, it's potentially one of the things that was missing for a very long time with the previous international markets under the CDM was the investment case to roll out projects within Africa. Africa was late to the party. And so didn't really benefit from those markets. I think by getting the capacity building in an engagement early in the region, that's going to be a game changer in terms of flows of climate finance into mitigation activities within the region.
Yep.
But I think that equally so for the Asia Pacific as well. We didn't have a huge uptake of CDM, for example, in the Pacific. Countries like China benefited significantly from it, but others in the Asia Pacific region perhaps less so. We've got a real opportunity, particularly with the work that the Australian government's doing through IPCOS, the Indo-Pacific Carbon Offset Scheme, real opportunity to build capacity and provide an avenue for finance to flow into to solutions in that region. So I'm quite I've been learning a lot and have a lot to take back from the sessions I've sat in around that. The real issue is sort of, can we just get some of the architecture and the detail around the rules moved along to, enable this to fast track rather than, having to wait another year before we've got, a registry in place or, things like that. I mean, these things are very important for a functioning market and a market that has transparency and integrity. But it does feel like we're really reinventing the wheel on some of the aspects of that infrastructure at the moment in the negotiations.
There's a real sense of and tomorrow. Okay, so we go back to the COP31 question before you go. What would you? You're advising Bowen, Minister Bowen, and I guess more broadly the government about our agenda for COP31. What's the one thing you'd like to see on that agenda?
I think that agenda has to be firmly focused on, our 2035. What are our next targets? What is our level of ambition? How do we really sort of
get that started now?
Get that discussion started now. I think we'll be, coming into the cycles of the global stock take. We'll have some information that will have come out of that to inform what those targets are. And I think we need to really be pushing for, a clear and significant ratcheting up of ambition for 2035. And that's a good positioning that we can have in at COP31.
Yep. Okay. Jai?
I think it kind of depends where we'll be. I think there's
back in Australia, we can go home in a day after this thing happens.
It's in Brisbane.
Yeah, that's true. Well, like, will we have made the great strides to be a renewable energy powerhouse? Will we have a mature nature-based solutions, agriculture and land-based market? Will the shift to EVs and hydrogen and all the other and sustainable aviation fuel have started to take hold? And so all of these things that so if we're there, then we kind of have an ability to show a bit of leadership within the market and sort of figure out how we can, make a bigger impact with our neighbours, whether they be, Indigenous communities and communities in the Pacific Islands, or whether it be sort of further afield. So I guess it just really depends on how well we're doing. I think the intention is there, the motivation is there, but I guess a bit of a wait and see.
Okay, and Peter.
Hopefully accelerated innovation by then. So we've got reset policy settings now in place. Obviously then there's tweaks around the rules and they're coming out in the next year and they should have taken in effect. So combining that with what businesses are doing on a net zero trajectory, we'll understand which sectors need to accelerate, which technologies need to accelerate, creation of new innovations, particularly digital optimization type of AI software solutions as well. So hopefully then, rather than a technology taker, we can then showcase to the world where we excel and what we want to be known for as well. So
So that, and thank you to all three of you for framing the next observation, which is, and hopefully everybody can see me, in a few hours' time, BCSD Australia will actually release the very first report at a COP. We've never done this before, and a bit crazy brave on our part, but thanks to support from the Women Business Coalition and our colleagues and partners at the World Business Council, we're releasing an ambition report to say, well, that's great. This COP is almost at an end, but what next? What are the opportunities around ambition? To thank Jai for highlighting it, but also action and, just as importantly, accountability, because that was an interesting theme that started to come through last week, particularly when the high-level expert group brought out its non-state actors report. And we think that some of those elements need to be brought to the fore in a conversation with Australian business particularly. So in about 6 hours' time, I think it is, because it's embargoed until then, this panel, +1, is going to be giving those who are attending the Australian Pavilion, and I guess more broadly this COP, an insight into the release of our report. And the report will go live onto on our website at the time of the event. It's very high level stakes coordination of a QR code, can I tell you? And we're very much looking forward to it. So look out for that, look out for the report, and I guess also look out for the plethora of LinkedIn posts that will come as a result of the particular event, because I think we are the second last event on the pavilion ever at this COP. Very exciting, very humbling in one respect. So thank you to all who have been tuning in. There will be one follow-up G'day Sharm El-Sheikh, which will come to you tomorrow morning. It will just be me giving you my take on what's been happening. Please dial in if you can. And if you haven't registered, go back to the website and you'll be able to do that in the next few hours. But a big thank you to all of our speakers. I should do that shout out now before I forget, which is we've had, I think, over 20 speakers over the last few 2 weeks, both live and pre-recorded. I think the highlight was, with the deepest respect to this panel, interviewing Kate Wilson at the Bedouin tent because it worked and I didn't think it would. But a big thank you to the members who, 3 of them are here. Thank you very much to your support, because this doesn't happen without you supporting us, being able to be here and bring you back to Australia and obviously bring you to this particular COP. A big thank you to the audience, both live and recorded. I think we've now had over 250 look at the videos already. And we find that it only builds over the next few weeks when people suddenly realize they haven't kept up. And I guess nothing other than to say safe travels and journey back to Australia. Why? Because I move on to another part of the world in the next few weeks, which is to Montreal. And this is the bridge between the two, which is to say that again, in the next few hours, we will be opening up the registration for G'day Montreal. Yes, I'm a sucker for punishment, and we're going to be doing the same thing again at the UNCBD Conference of the Parties number 15 in downtown Montreal, which starts on the 7th of December. And this time it's a slightly different grouping, because all of these people need to go home and see their families, do their laundry, get their Christmas gifts if they haven't already. And so we're going to be joined by some more members and some interesting insights from colleagues from right across the world, including the IFRS Foundation, Business for Nature, WBCSD. It's never ending in this world, I have to say. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. And my name is Andrew Petersen. Take care. Bye for now.